Hey guys, what's up? It's Biscuitboo Horror Reviews. I'm here with a Blu-ray, DVD, and vinyl collection update. Um, just a small little haul here. Part of this stuff is about half of it actually. Um, about half of this stuff is stuff that I was supposed to feature in the last video, but I completely forgot. And the other half is birthday presents from my siblings. So yeah, let's just get this started. Let's start with the DVDs. So first we got a release from Sub Rosa, which is a distributor known for a lot of low budget shot on video stuff. It's Holla If You Hear Me Kill You. This is a really interesting, entertaining, urban kind of horror comedy slasher film that Andrew and I watched on our very first Halloween stream in 2016. We watched it and I picked it out because I thought the title sounded awful, and I was like, all right, this is going to be, and both of us thought it was going to be the worst one we watched that night, but it turned out to be like the best one we watched that night. Um, so yeah, it is a pretty entertaining urban horror comedy about a group of rappers and musicians being trapped inside a building with a maniacal serial killer who's picking them off one by one because he wants to steal their music. It's pretty entertaining. Next, we got the Ted V. Michaels film, The Cauldron, Baptism of Blood. This is Ted V. Michaels' sequel to his, I think, 1971 or 73. I think it might be 73 film. Um, Blood Orgy of the She-Devils, which is the absolute worst Ted V. Michaels movie, honestly. It is beyond fucking boring. This one is also kind of boring, but it's got some really hilariously awful sets and visual effects that are featured in the film. It's quite the treat. If you enjoyed like Demon Haunt from him, this is something very similar to Demon Haunt. Oh yeah, well, what am I doing? Next, we got the Phil Stevens film Lung, which this is, I think this is like an earlier Phil Stevens feature film, as well as, and then the remake of it, which is Lung 2. I watched Lung 1 because I kind of figured, okay, so I gotta watch them in order. And then I was like, yeah, that was kind of interesting. And then I went to watch Lung 2, and I was like, wait, this is the exact same movie, but done on a higher budget many years later. So I'm gonna wait a while before I watch Lung 2. But Lung 1 is pretty interesting, and it's a release from Unearthed Films, which they usually do pretty decent releases of interesting movies. Um, Next, we got the Blu-ray of an anime film from the early 70s that is one of my favorite animated movies of all time. It's Belladonna of Sadness. This is a very interesting film that I reviewed on my channel many, many years ago. And when I reviewed it, the version that I ended up seeing was this recut VHS of it that completely ruined the movie and had scenes out of order and everything. When I went to rewatch it years after, seeing that version and writing the review, I was like, this is a completely different movie almost. So I kind of feel bad because I remember saying, I think I said in the review that it's just a little too disjointed, and it's and it gives away the ending at the beginning of the movie. That's not the case with the original cut, which is the version that's on Blu-ray. Hand drawn animated film from Japan from the 70s, has to do with witches and making deals with the devil, as well as rape and weird, colorful imagery. Next, we got a Andy Milligan film. This is one of the releases from Garage House Pictures for their Blu-ray lineup. They did the Blu-ray release of Milligan's Monstrosity, which is a really, really entertaining movie. It's Weirdo. This is the slipcover for it, which is very, very nice, very similar to the slipcover edition for Monstrosity, except that one was red. Unlike Monstrosity, though, the actual cover art for the Blu-ray is actually like legitimately pretty good cover art. Um, Unlike, you know, Monstrosity, where it was some of the worst Blu-ray cover art I think I've ever seen in my entire life. I've watched this one, and this is definitely a Milligan film, although it has an almost professional, or at least semi-professional vibe to it. It doesn't feel as cheap as his earlier stuff. This is one of his last movies he made. It doesn't feel as cheap as his earlier stuff he did in the 60s and 70s. The camera work isn't done in a cinema verite style. The violence in the film is pretty much almost completely saved for the final act. Um, and like I don't know, this is just like a relatively well made for a Milligan film. Also, there's no stock music in the movie, which is something that Milligan did quite a bit. Um, Either way, this is about a guy who is he's picked on and he has an abusive mother, and after being tormented so much, he goes and becomes a murderer. Um, and that's a very common theme in a lot of Milligan movies is the abusive mothers um, and stuff like that. So, yeah, The Weirdo. I would actually recommend this one. Whether or not you're a fan of Milligan, this is actually a pretty cool psychological horror slasher. Up next, we got another Phil Stevens film. This is his film that I actually covered on my channel, and happy I picked this up because this is like the limited edition release of it. Found this for like 15-ish bucks. It's Flowers, which this I covered this on my channel. It's a very disturbing, interesting movie about a bunch of murder victims waking up in the crawl space of their murderer, and they essentially there's no dialogue in the movie, and they essentially go around the house and end up seeing flashbacks of their lives um, shortly before they were horrifically murdered. And it's violent and disgusting and dirty and grimy. Um, it looks really great. It's very artistic and interesting. Some people have called it like a faux art film because the artistic merit of it is kind of questionable, but I don't know. This comes with the soundtrack with the film on. I think this is on DVD. I think so. Let me. Yeah, this is DVD. I knew there was no Blu-ray release, or at least there isn't a Blu-ray release currently of this film. But yeah, it's a DVD release of the film itself with the soundtrack and a bonus disc that has, I think, like audition tapes on it, as well as some short films, interviews with people, which, is cool. Really, really great stuff from the independent underground horror scene. Next, we got some bootlegs, which this is some stuff from my bootleg guy that I meant to feature in my last video, but I just completely forgot. Um, we got Star Wars: The Original Trilogy on Blu-ray. Now, yes, these movies are on Blu-ray, but this is a very special release because this is the entire trilogy in the despecialized versions without the added scenes and CG and extra bullshit. These are as close to the original cut as you can get. I think, I'm pretty sure, or they might actually be the original theatrical cuts. Either way, I've never actually seen the original versions of the Star Wars trilogy because I've grown up with the special editions because those are the ones they air on cable and have Blu-ray releases of. So this is I think they're like 780p quality, which, isn't necessarily the best quality in the world, but, it's on Blu-ray, so it's cool. We got the Guinea Pig collection because the Guinea Pig movies are out of print as hell in America. I already have Flower, Flesh, and Blood, which is now out of print and going for some crazy prices. I have the special gore cover edition of it, but this is the complete set, complete with all 6 movies in the series, as well as 2 making of documentaries that they made about the movies. The Guinea Pig movies are very interesting because the first 2 are like fake snuff films, and then the third one is this weird Japanese splatter comedy. And then the fourth one, which so far is probably one of the best and most artistically sound ones in the series, out of what I've seen, Mermaid in a Manhole is like a really interesting body horror film about an artist who finds a mermaid in the sewer, and he attempts to take care of her because he wants to paint her, and she starts to develop sores and stuff. It's very gross and gooey, and it's really good body horror. But I still haven't seen Devil Doctor Woman or The Android of Notre Dame. Still, very nice set. I don't think these are actually like the HD rip qualities, but quality versions of these films. But I don't think these have ever been remastered for HD, so it don't matter. And finally, we have the exploitation classic Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. This is an immensely iconic and influential exploitation film from the mid '60s that is one of those movies that everybody has at least heard the title to, or they know of it, but not everybody has seen it. That being said, this is a really, really legitimately amazing, entertaining as hell exploitation film from the mid '60s. It's definitely not as nasty as it might have, definitely not as nasty and cruel as it might have been seen in the '60s, but it's immensely entertaining, and it's just I had fun from beginning to end watching it, and I was legitimately surprised by how entertaining and enjoyable it was, and that's cool. That's cool. As I said before, this is a bootleg of the Blu-ray edition of it because the Blu-ray is insanely out of print. On to the two things. These are also things I left out in the last video. We've got the first issue of House by the Cemetery from Avon Press. Those of you who don't know, Avon Press is a independent comic book publisher, and they've been doing series based on horror films as well as they have their own original series going on. But the big things are they recently finished the comic series of Maniac, which is a really good one, and they're working on a sequel to it, which I'm interested in. And they also are working on adaptations of Lucio Fulci movies. They started with City of the Living Dead and Zombie, and now they're doing House by the Cemetery, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, on top of being one of my favorite Lucio Fulci movies. And they are also planning on doing The Beyond, which is one that I think is pretty good. It's a nice release. Again, signed and numbered to limited to 300. The artwork is very, very nice. I'm trying not to damage this fucking thing while it's good artwork. It's violent. It definitely expands on the kind of universe of the film a bit. Like, something I didn't expect the Maniac comic books to do was, kind of explain some of Frank's mumblings that you hear throughout the film, and even give some of his victims a backstory, which is, cool. Again, limited edition slipcover version, which I think is almost out of print, is almost gone. Like with every, Avon release ever, it comes with, bookmark, sticker, a trading card, a pamphlet about the upcoming series. And this one, instead of doing the VHS boxes like they did for Maniac, they are, at least for this one, they did an art print, again, autographed, and this is limited as well. I was going to hang this up, but, I figured I'd just do what I do until I can get a proper frame for it, at least, and I will just put it in here with the rest of this stuff, like I do with the VHS slips. But still, this series and Maniac were the two series I was like, oh man, I'm hopping on these. And they're only about, like, $15 a piece, like these issues, limited to 300, signed, numbered, come in a special slipcover, and that's really cool. And these aren't available in any stores. These are never going to be made and available in a digital format. I've heard some people complain, like, why has it got to be physical? It's like, because physical is the best format for comic books, let's not lie. Either way. The last thing I have is a record here, a vinyl album. It is the Dead Kennedys' Frankenchrist. I love this album. This is a really, really great album. One of the best Dead Kennedys albums for sure. But then again, honestly, out of their first like 4 albums, there isn't really anything I would say is a bad album in there. I'm not the biggest fan of Bedtime for Democracy, but still, Frankenchrist is really great. It's got some classic stuff on it, like Soup is Good Food, A Growing Boy Needs His Lunch, Jockorama, MTV Get Off the Air, Stars and Stripes of Corruption. There's some really great stuff on here. Again, one of the best punk rock albums ever put out, and this is the third Dead Kennedys record in my collection, which is really cool. Happy to have this. Caught that one for a pretty decent price. Anyway, guys, that's it for this Blu-ray DVD vinyl collection update. I'm Biscaboo Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.